Webcam on. All right. I think we're good. Got the mic on. I've got cameras rolling. I've got my little computer here to see what's what. And what is what today? Today is Wednesday. A very rainy, gloomy, gross kind of Wednesday. But that's okay. You know, when you're in the shop, it doesn't really matter, does it? What do we have on the schedule for today? Today, we are going to continue working on our sewing machine bases. These bad boys right here. Turn around so it looks pretty because you can see the logo I carved in the front. Sorry, Woodcraft, nothing being purchased today. We're going to do some bottom cutting on these. Now, where I left off last week, or not last week, but last Monday, a couple days ago, was finishing off the gluing up of the base. And I had to get all of them put into clamps. Some of them had already been done, but I wanted to finish them off. So I think last show we went ahead and finished sanded the inside. We put them into clamps. I set that aside. That has now been done. We also took the edges of these and we put them in some clamps, and we took the planer, hand plane, and we cut these down so that any overhang was now flush with the flat part here, and these are now silky smooth. And I mean, that's not a critical thing to do, but because I round these edges right here, it helps if I do have some nice square corners right here. So it does help. And that's typically why I will take those down with the hand plane. Since we've got all of that done now, I took the one out of the clamp yesterday that you all saw me put in the clamps, and I took that one out, did the same thing with that, did the sides, and then I put it on the cast iron table for my table saw and made sure that the bottom was super flat, which, well, my table probably needs to be flattened again. When I made this, I flattened it, but my table's not great. It's that wobble that you're seeing, that's not in the base. That is in my table. So this needs to be flattened once again. That's kind of a chore because I have to set up a whole rig with boards on the sides and level it, and then use my my slab flattening rig with a router to go back and forth and flatten this whole thing again so it's a nice flat surface. I don't do, like I said, most of the things that I check for flat, I use my cast iron table on my table saw. So it's not super critical that my workbench is flat. It would be nice, but it's not super critical. So I don't worry about that. But like I said, trying not to tangent too much here, I flattened this one and the others, and let me just show you, they are now very flat on the bottom here. So these edges are very flat, no rocking, no wobbling. And the reason I need to do that is because today we are going to cut rabbets into the bottom. Yes, today is Waskly Wabbit Day. And I will be using a Wabbet bit, or a rabbit bit. I will knock that off. But I will be using a rabbiting bit to, in essence, fit a piece of plywood, which is about, I think this is the same stock. It's 1/4 inch, but it's plywood, so it's not really 1/4 inch. It's much less than that. I mean, not much less. It's a little less than that. Plywood typically does not use standard measurements. So instead of being 1/4 inch, this is about a 1/16 less. So 2, 4, 6, 7, like 7/16, right? 7/16? No. Sorry about that. No, I'm sorry. It's like 2, 3. Yeah, it's actually 30 seconds. It's more like 7/30 seconds or something like that. Plywood just does not use standard measurements. I'm not sure why that is. You can buy some plywood in standard increments, like that's exactly like 1/4 inch. Typically it's not, though. It's a little less, which is funny because if you're doing things like cutting dados for building cabinets and such, they actually make dado stacks that are perfectly spaced for the weird spacing of a piece of plywood. That being said, I don't need to worry about the thickness of this so much. As long as I've got it measured, then I know how deep to cut my rabbets into the sides of the base. Rabbiting bits come in a bunch of different sizes. So if you don't know what a rabbiting bit is, I'm going to hold this up so you can see it a little bit better here. This is a rabbiting bit. This is also a rabbiting bit right here. And it has a guide bearing that runs along the surface of whatever you're cutting the rabbet into. And then you set the depth of this. So typically, let me show you a setup here. What I would be doing is if I'm cutting a rabbet to make a little pocket down here for my piece of plywood, I'm going to run this rabbiting bit inside of this board right here, but I'm going to run it deep enough that it cuts a little shelf right in there, and that shelf is called a rabbet. You can get these in different sizes. This one is I think this is like a 3/4 inch, which is really important to know how big for me, the radius is of this thing, or the diameter, because you can see this one is much larger. Let me get it up here so you can see. So this one right here, much larger than this one right here. And the reason that's important is when I'm cutting inside corners, so I'm going to run that rabbiting bit inside of this base right here. And it's going to run around and run inside the base and just the entire perimeter of the bottom. Okay. Now, why that's important as far as the size of the bit, it's not the depth of the cut that matters to me. It's two things. One, it's the width of the cut. So how far from, let's see if I can get this a little closer. So how far is it from the bearing to the end of the blade here? So that's going to control how deep the cut goes, but also how big is the diameter of that cutter, because if you look right here, hopefully you can see when I get into that corner, it's no easy way to show this or hold the blade. So when I get into this corner right here, I need that blade. I don't want that corner, that round part right here, to be too large. If I use this one, it's going to give me a real giant round corner right here. It's going to be very large. The radius on that is going to be much larger than I want. I like the smaller radius that this smaller bit gives me. And to give you a little context, when I'm actually cutting the plywood to go into the bottoms, and you'll see me doing this later, it's about the size of a nickel. That's about how big the radius is. And I use a nickel. This is my extremely technical tool, but I use this nickel right here to actually establish the round. So when I go to fit this into the rabbet, I'll use a nickel and just trace that nickel, that round portion of the nickel, onto the plywood, and then I'll cut that off, or I'll do it on my sander, and then it will perfectly fit into this rabbet. It'll all make sense in a few minutes. But that's what we're doing. Oh, I'm probably gonna need this again. So a couple of things we need to do. I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna use this one. This one's a really great, this is an Amana. This large one is an Amana bit, and it has a different sized bearings. So from very large bearings to very small bearings, and that controls the actual width of the rabbiting cut. So I can take this down from like an 1/8 inch wide cut to up to, I think it's a 1/2 inch wide rabbet on here. So that's really important to be able to have that variability. This one is just one size fits the size it is. I think this is a 1/4 inch. So if you measure from the bearing to the end of the cutter, which is hard to do, but that is basically 1/4 inch. That's how much of a cut I get with this little tiny one, which is fine. I only need a 1/4 inch shelf. These, something to make note of, these are not weight bearing bottoms that I'm putting into these boxes or these bases. If I was going to be putting things inside of here and this had to hold anything on it, I would use a different system for putting these base bottoms in. I would probably cut a slot in the board itself. So I would cut a groove in here, and then that would insert inside the groove. But because these are not weight bearing, all these are is a way to, when you set the machine in there, it catches any dust, dirt, or debris underneath and keeps it from falling onto the tabletop surface. So they don't bear any of the weight. Even the corner supports that I put in, they're not resting, they're glued to the sides of the base. So there's all this nice face grain right here. They're not resting on the bottom. I mean, they're touching the bottom, but the bottom is not supporting those holdups, those little corner posts that I use. They're not supporting any of that weight. All that weight is basically distributed amongst the glue joint on the sides, not at the bottom. So not weight bearing. If it was weight bearing, I would not use this method for putting a bottom into a box or a base or a drawer or anything like that. When I make drawers, I do not make them with a bottom that goes in like this because they just won't hold up. And you might have seen somebody making drawers like that where they just put the bottom in and then they just tack it along the way. And after a while, it starts to droop and pull away from the sides. So if you're putting anything in there that is heavy, this is not the way to go. But if you just need a semi-functional and more of a aesthetically pleasing bottom, it doesn't have to hold any weight, this is a good way to go. Technically speaking, I could actually make these without bottoms. It's not required. But because this is a sewing machine and you oil them and you do things like that, if you are using it, then you probably want to have a something in there to catch any of, like I said, the oils or debris or whatever. And a lot of people will just put like a small rag or paper towel or whatever and rest it in the bottom just so the oil dripping down has something to soak into. And that's its whole purpose. So that being said, today we are going to make rabbets, and I've got several bases over on the side here that we're going to do those in. And the first thing I'm going to do is I have my, this is really nice. I need to get a small diamond stone that I can use. They make little small handheld, they're kind of really flat, and they're made for like sharpening knife blades and things like that. What I like to do before this bit has been used quite a bit. I'm not sure. This says it's a Skill 1/4 inch rabbet bit. So it's not a super high quality. It is a carbon, you know, but it's not super high quality. But in order to get the best cut that I can, usually what I will try to do is just give this flat part of the blade a couple of passes here, just to kind of reestablish that flat. And hopefully that will give me a nice cutting edge. So there's that one done. And it just gets some of the buildup and stuff off of there. And you can see, hopefully on here, you can see that there's a line building up on here, and that's coming off of this bit here. Like I said, not always required, but I do find that the blade cuts a little better if I've given it just a couple of passes across my diamond stone. And I'm not doing the angled portion here, I'm just doing the flat, which should reestablish a nice cutting edge. So just a couple of passes on the diamond stone. It knocks off some of the stuff on there. And like I said, it's not necessary, but if you use a bit a lot, you probably need to do a little maintenance on your bits. A lot of them are not required anymore, but I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to hold it up really close here. I can't get the light just right, but it is just taking all of the buildup and such off of the inside of this blade and makes it just a little bit sharper, and that will make it more efficient. All right, moving on, we need to establish how deep does this rabbet need to go. So how far up into this bottom piece of this board does it need to go? The plywood itself, if I'm just going to stick it on here and use this as a guide, I'm just going to draw a line on here real quick. So you can see that line I drew right here, hopefully you see that line right here. That line is the thickness of the piece of plywood. I need to go deeper than that because I don't want the plywood to be exactly flush with the bottom of the base. I want it to be recessed just a little bit. And also because if I go back and do any final sanding or whatever, if this is flush, well, that's going to mean that I'm going to start sanding on the base. And I don't like to sand this plywood too much because it's very thin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go probably a 1/16 of an inch deeper. So this right here, what I'm going to do is get my little tool right here. And I think because this is a 1/4 inch bit, and if I do a nice 1/4 inch cut, sometimes, like I said, I can go a little bit further than that. Maybe I'll add like a 32nd or so. So I'm just using my little Craig setup tool here, which is nice because it has a little ruler on here, and I establish this distance right here. That's going to give me a line that is slightly deeper. Okay, and you can see the little mark that I made just above that. So it's slightly deeper right here, and I'll do a test cut on a piece of scrap wood and just make sure that it's enough for this piece. And this is just a setup piece that I'm going to use here. I'll have to cut the plywood from larger sheets. The bottoms that I'm going to make, I'll cut from some larger 2x4 sheets. And we will do that after we make, after we make the rabbets. But, all right, so we've established how deep that is going to be. Cherry has a tendency to chip out when it's being rabbeted, especially if you're using a slightly older bit that's not super sharp. So as that blade is carving the wood out, what happens is you can get some chip outs and fly outs. It's usually not too bad, but what I like to do, let's stick this over here, is just establish, and I'm going to use this, I'm going to establish a nice line, a little cut line for the blade to follow so that it does not, and I'm going to set this up right here, so that it already slices some of the fibers in the base and makes it a much cleaner cut out, hopefully. That is the plan anyway. All right, just double check that, make sure that we've got a good depth established. I'm going to put this up just a hair more, just a tiny bit more. And then let me see, it should go, yeah, just to the edge. All right, and what I'll do is I'm just going to take this and set it in the board here. See if we can get you a better view. How about this? So it's going to go inside the board and then drag across like this and create a line inside there. It's kind of hard for me to do it and show you on camera, so I'm just gonna do it. And then this thing goes across the entire perimeter of the inside. So just drag it all the way across, and just keep making them all the way around. It's actually, because I've got this new tool, it's actually very nice. It goes pretty quick. Now, it doesn't quite get all the way into the corners, but that's okay. I did find, I found one limiter to this new design is that I can't set it, it's a little thick this way, so I have to, let's run it this way. There we go. There we go. And I can actually just go like this. And I'm just making a couple of passes. And then I will finish it off right here. And then hopefully I will, you know what, let me drag a pencil in there so you can see this line better. So what that did was it actually cut a really nice little slit in there, and I'm going to use that to set up the depth. That actually is cut fibers where I ran a pencil lead in there to just make it show up, but that line progresses all the way across here. And you can see that there's no pencil lead on this side. So this runs all the way along the perimeter, and hopefully that will give me cleaner cuts when I get ready to do these. Now I have multiple bases, so I need to do this on all the bases here. So let's get busy and let's just get these marked. Actually, one pass is pretty good. Yeah. This cutting blade on here is really nice. Does a really nice job. And run it up to the top. Now, I didn't glue the screw in here. Mr. Smith. Hey, Pete, what's up? My buddy Pete, who built himself a really sweet shop. I have been yet to go down and see it, but he's been working on it in his retirement home, which he's not retired yet, but he will be one day soon, hopefully. Counting the days, and then he has a really sweet shop setup that he's made, so that's pretty exciting. I can't wait to go down, buddy. So hopefully soon we'll get together and you can give me the grand tour. Very excited to see that. All right, let's get these cut. Oh, dude, he got a nice saw. Very nice. He got himself a central, you got a central vac. Okay, I am officially very jealous now. Extremely jealous now because I think we talked last week about my dust control and my lack thereof, and my air filtration. Actually, my air filtration system is pretty nice. I'm gonna actually be turning that on. If you watched last week, I made a budget air filtration system out of a furnace filter and a $20 box fan, which works exceptionally well. So, dude, is that a jet? Man, he got himself a jet. That is sweet. Nice bandsaw. Bandsaw's on my list of upgrades, just because I want more. I mean, this one's fine. It does cutting that I need, but I really want more resaw height in there. Right now, my resawing, I can only do about 7 inches of resaw on mine. So in order to do taller boards and make them skinnier boards, you know, resawing is not when you cut the wood flat, but when you cut it this way and you cut like down the middle. So I want to be able to resaw taller pieces of wood, which means I need a saw that will give me that much clearance. And right now, I don't have one of those. So on the list, you know, that's the great thing about a wood shop, though, is everything's on the list. There's always something better that you can grab, right? So as far as this thing goes, I have to pull it this way. I did not. Typically, I would put a little drop of super glue on the screw on the end of this thing when I tightened it in, but I did not do that. So if I push it the other way, it actually unscrews the screw that's holding the cutter head in. So don't want to do that. So if I pull it this way, it's actually going in the direction of tightening, and that's fine. That works. And actually pulling it towards me is more controlled anyway, so. But it does a really nice job. I'm super happy with this thing. Yeah, 11 bucks. I can't remember which. I think the link is still in my description, so if you want to make your own marking gauge, it's like 11 bucks. I don't know if they're in stock yet or not, but they will be one day. So keep it on your list if you're looking to make yourself a marking gauge, because they're pretty sweet. As long as I'm checking comments, let me just, all right. Okay, so I think I've got the last one here to get marked. And then we can go over and do some setup on the router table. I actually had to do a little work this morning before we came in the shop to clear all the stuff off, because I use the router table as a work surface as well, and I do, like, most of my finishing work is done on there, which if you've watched any of my episodes when I was doing finishing, you saw that that's where I did the work. So, all right, this seems like a tedious step, but it does improve the quality of the cut once you get going. All right, this is all done. Let me pull this back in, protect the blade. And now we can, I'm gonna move my little box over here. Now we can go over to the saw, or to the router table. Let me change cameras. I think I got a good angle set up here. There we go. So we can go back over to here and we can start setting up the router table. And let me move all these bases out of the way because that's not necessary for them to be sitting there while we're doing a setup of the table itself. This is my scrap board. I'm going to be using this to establish the proper depth of the rabbet. Actually, you know what? Let me do this. I did kind of screw up a little bit. So I probably should have marked my setup board. So I'm going to come back to this one that I just did and reset the depth of this block. I just want it to be the exact same depth. So I'm going to set it in the groove that I made. And hang on a second. I need to tighten this screw, even though I was doing it with the... I really need to put a drop of super glue in here is what I need to do. Because that will, either that or Loctite, one of the two. Super glue works though. And it breaks free pretty easily. All right, I'm back. So I'm going to set this in the groove I just made and reset this block distance and then tighten my screw down here. All right, now same size groove. Come over here to this view. So I'm going to run that groove into this piece of wood just to get my setup. There we go. All right. Well, first thing I need to do is take this off because there's obviously no place to put the bit. Grab the bit here. So let's set up the table here. I'm going to grab one of my center plates. And this is just a blank one, which I keep on there just to keep stuff from falling down in when I'm not using it. And I need my, well, that's interesting. Normally my tool for taking this off is sitting right here, but it seems to have left me. Oh, there it is. All right. Not super organized this morning. I thought I was, but I was not. All right, I'm going to unlock this. It's just a little U-shaped thing that fits in the holes, unlocks, pulls this plate out, and then I'll find a plate that actually works, that gives me clearance without touching the blade. That's super important. So that's this one right here. I'm going to leave it off though while I set up the table. So let me set these aside. And now I get my router lift crank. You may or may not recall, I think I covered this before, but I use a Triton. What size is this thing? It's super, let me look down here and see if I can get the horsepower on this thing. No, it's like their largest, like 2 3/4 horsepower, but it also has all the setup mechanisms to make it an under table router system. You just take the spring out from the plunge, and then you can use this along with this Craig's plate, which is made to fit with this particular router, which is really sweet. And the nice thing is when you raise this all the way to the top, you don't need 2 wrenches. It locks it in place, which is really nice for setup at a table. So I'm going to take this, this is my 1/8 inch roundover bit. Just stick it in my little magnetic tray. And then we will, now these are a 1/4 inch. I also have a 1/2 inch collet. So depending on the blade that I'm using, I will switch collets if necessary. So because of the surface and stuff here, I don't set these all the way down. I tend to raise them up just about 1/4 inch or so that there's still plenty of shaft inside that collet and it's holding it nice and straight, but it's also not bottomed out on the collet. I just raise it up and I just find it works better that way. So a little twist on there and it's good to go. And then once I lower this down, it turns freely now. So it just locks it when it's in that full position, which is really handy. Once I get this down far enough, you have to lower it down far enough for the collet to clear the top plate here. And then I will lock this in. Okay. And now I can set this up so that there it is, the mark that I made, I'm going to just pencil line this just to make it a little easier for me to see. There we go. So there's my pencil line on there. And I will use that to set the depth of the blade on the side of this bit. This is not plugged in, by the way, so please unplug your tools or make sure they're not powered up. I mean, for me to turn this on, I have to reach all the way under the table and flip the switch on the router. I don't have a paddle on the side to turn the power on, so it's a little bit safer, but still, you know, common sense says don't have your tools plugged in when you're dealing with stuff that could rip your fingers off. That's always my philosophy. All right, that looks like I am adjusted just right according to my little line there. So I'll take this out and now what I typically do here is I put a piece of cardboard along the back of my router table here, and then that catches most of the chips that would want to fly off this way. And then I would also put a hose fan right here from my dust collector, so it would sit. And I will still do that, but it sits right here. So it's kind of leading in. So all the chips that are flying off kind of come to the hose here. But, you know, it's not a perfect solution. But if I kind of do that and just clamp it into my leg clamp, then this hose is sitting on. This stuff gets messy. The nice thing about doing these routes is that most of the wood chips are captured because I'm routing the interiors. Most of the wood chips are actually stay within the frame of the base, and so they're not flying out a lot. But you know, nothing's perfect, so you can still get chips flying around, and it gets a little messy. The other thing that I will typically do is I will wear a mask when I do this, because a lot of the stuff, like I said, it just doesn't get captured. And you know, nobody likes to breathe this stuff in. The other thing I need to do, so I'm going to go off camera for a second, is I'm going to take my my fan, my box fan filter, and I'm going to plug that in and turn that on, just to make sure that I'm clearing as much of this dust out of the air as possible. Which means I have to turn off my little heater here for a minute. And we're going to plug this in, and we'll turn on the fan. And there we go. So my box fan is running now, and I don't know what setting it's on. I'm going to turn it. There we go. I just put it on 2, which is pretty good. And let's see, I've got this, my dust collection, got my test board, I've got the height set, got my mask, got my remote for my dust collection. The only thing I need now is some power. So I'll get my power cord, find the cord for my router, and I'm going to plug this in. And one thing to be cognizant of, I guess I've always found, is you want to know which way your blade is rotating. And always, you don't want to put your wood in and go with the turn. That makes for bad missing stumpy fingers. So you always want to go against the rotation, which can be confusing on routers, because if you're using a router flipped over and handheld, the rotation path is opposite of the way it is when it's in a table. So on my table, rotation is counterclockwise, and that means that when I put a piece of wood in here, I'm always going to be moving this piece of wood from right to left in order to capture that. If I'm doing the inside, if I'm doing the outside of a board, it switches. You just be cognizant of the way your blade turns and try to go so that the cutting blade is always running into your wood, not with the way you're moving it, if that makes any sense at all. Probably not. All right, let me mask up and do a test cut, and we'll measure that, see how it looks. We're going to use the excuse me, we're going to use the piece of plywood that I have over there and just measure that for cut depth. And if it's any good, we'll start cutting the rabbets on the bases. If it's not, we'll just make some adjustments. All right. And I usually find, like I said, just because this thing throws up chips, if you don't wear glasses like I do, I would definitely suggest using a some sort of eye protection. It's just a smart move, and this stuff does kick up debris and such. So, all right, let's get this thing cranked up. It's loud. My noise protection will hopefully kick in, and it won't be too annoying. Yeah, that makes a mess. But it makes a nice cut on the end here. And that's what I'm looking at. You can now see it. I did not cut the whole way over here because it's a test cut and I don't need it to run all the way to the edge. I just need a length of it. The other thing is that I didn't cut. So if I've got something that's cutting, like this is making a 1/4 inch deep cut, I don't generally cut the whole depth at one time. I'll usually do like a light pass to establish it, and then I'll come back and do a finishing pass so that I just don't cut that entire depth. So maybe do half at a time. I just find that you're less prone to getting chip out, and it's generally just a little safer to do thin passes rather than thick passes. So what I'm looking at, let me come over here, wipe the dust off my seat and show you over on this camera. So now what I'm looking at is, here's my rabbet that I just cut in here. The base will be like this. So this rabbet will run along the bottom edge. And you can see it here. Hopefully you can see that rabbet shelf right there. This plywood is going to be the base. So that's going to sit in my rabbet like this. And let me show you what I get for depth on that. So you can see, hopefully, that sits inside. Now that actually is a little deep. I don't know that I need it to be quite that deep. But it did go to my line. Is that to my line? So I can check it with my tool here to see if that was the depth that I set. And it is. It's actually exactly on the depth that I set. So, I mean, it's a little deeper than it needs to be, but you know what? That's okay. I don't mind that. It just gives me some area on the bottom that if I needed to, at some point in time, say the wood moved a little bit and I needed to reestablish a flat bottom, that I have some room here to shave off without running into the base or into the bottom of the base. So we're going to go with that. That works for me. This part of it is not exact measurement. It's just, you know, close, ballpark, hand grenades and something else. All right, so now we've established that that's a working depth. All we need to do now is run a base through and make a rabbet all the way around the interior of the base. And then you'll see what I was talking about with the rounded corners as well. Okay, let me set stuff up here again. And this time it might be actually a little handier if I turn the dust collection on. I didn't turn it on until afterwards that last time. Oops, but that router is so loud I couldn't hear that my dust collection wasn't on. So maybe I'll turn that on first, then I'll turn the router on. And the other thing that I did not have on, which I was really sorry about, but I was already into the cut, is I did not have my ears on. Let me put the camera over here. So I did not have my ears on. Shame, shame, shame on me, because this thing is stupid loud. It's probably running 120 decibels. It'll damage hearing if you don't wear ear protection. So stupid me, got my ears this time, got my mask. The only thing I don't like about wearing a mask is it does tend to fog the glasses just a little bit, but whatever. All right, let's do a cut here on this base, and let's see what we can figure out here. Oh, it helps if I put the mask on first. All right, mask is on. Ears are on. Dust collection, then router. Okay, that's the first pass. It's pretty rough. I just did the outline here. I will go back and do the finishing cuts. Some of them are deeper in places, some are lighter. What I wanted to show you was the reason I like to do that preliminary cut with the marking gauge is you can see, like, sometimes it chips out large pieces like this. That's pretty significant. I get larger ones sometimes, but it cut it and it pulled it out. This edge right here, that's that edge that I cut with the marking knife. So it came out clean on that point right there. And that's why I do the marking knife before I do anything else. All right, so, and I also like to do kind of like stop midway and just clean the dust out, and it keeps it from building up underneath there and make sure I can keep this flat. And you'll notice I change angles a lot. I like to keep it so that I can see the bit with the wood at all times. So I will move it around like this. The bit's like right here, but I move the table around so that I'm always got the best angle on here. So, all right, let's finish this cut off here. Okay, pull my ears off, kind of sit over here for a minute, and let's look at what we ended up with there. All right, so we established that interior rabbet, and generally what I like to do is just take a little piece of sandpaper I'm not really sanding, I'm just knocking off some of the loose edges from the router cut. There's just some little hangers on, and they come right off with a little quick swipe of a fine sandpaper. But I want you to be able to see what we got here. This is the rabbet all the way around the perimeter of the inside right here. From here, it's pretty simple because all I have to do is measure this distance to this distance. That gives me the length of plywood I need to cut. I measure here to here. That gives me the width. And then I will, once I have the length and the width cut, then I will measure these little roundovers with my nickel, my little trusty nickel, wherever I put that. Hopefully I can find my nickel again. Not like I couldn't find another one, but that was my shop nickel. There it is. So then I will take my nickel and put it in there and do it. So just so you can see, a nickel fits, you can see that? A nickel fits that roundover like perfectly. And that's why I use a nickel as my roundover measure for cleaning up my corners and then fitting the base and the bottom. Once they're cut and fitted in on the corners, I just put a tiny bead of glue all the way around here, and then I just clamp it in. Stack some weight on there or clamp it in, and then leave them for a day, and then they're good to go. So that is how I create the rabbeted base bottoms. I think they look really nice. Like I said, they fit in there. They're not super functional as far as, you know, a box, but they do add a nice finishing touch in there. So yeah, there we go. Oh, the other thing I want to show you is this width right here. You notice when I routed these handles on the CNC machine that I was very careful with the depth of that cut for the handle, because this is the path that the rabbeting takes. Because I'm losing 1/4 of an inch, I need this little bit of meat in between the handle and the base, and that gives me just enough. It's just about 1/8 of an inch between this and this. And that's pretty much the amount of wood I think is necessary to provide stability and not be flimsy, and be less prone to being chipped out or damaged. So there you go. That is that. Now it's just busy time. Now I get to go over, and I've got, this was number 1. I've got 2, 3, 4 more to do. So you want to, you know, bathroom break, kick back, get that other cup of coffee going. That works too. While I do these, like I said, I usually do 2 passes on each one. But once I get going, it pretty much is a pretty quick process here. But I do take a minute to clear chips, or a couple seconds in between each pass, just to keep that buildup off. Hopefully you saw that mountain of chips that was left there. It doesn't look like I'm taking a lot of wood out, but yeah, there's a lot of wood chips that come out of these things. A lot more than you would think there would be. So I always take time to clear in between. I'm just checking for comments. I see no comments, which is fine. All right, let me grab my next victim. Where are you? You'll do. I feel much more secure routing these things. Let me switch cameras. That setup block that I had, I should have done that flat. It would have been much more stable. When I was doing this setup, because all I was doing the depth, it didn't really matter. I should have done that with this wood instead of standing up. I should have done it flat. It would have been much more stable and probably much safer, because there's a lot of surface area to put pressure down against and it won't flip over or tip. Having it this way, it's just not as stable. So probably not the smartest move on my part. I've never been accused of being too smart. But when I'm routing these, I don't have that issue because it's super stable, because it's a box. So the box is super stable. So I feel really comfortable routing these rabbets in here using this bit. And this is on edge, but it's actually just there's a huge flat surface for me. So much more comfortable, much safer. And I know these are glued in super well, so it's not like it's going to pop out and fall apart as I'm routing. Famous last words, right? All right, let's get this one done and we will just keep on cranking here. Ears, mask, dust. So one thing I didn't mention, whoo, man, am I dusty. The one thing I didn't mention was these cutouts right here, which are for the middle wall construction of the side compartment. And when I'm cutting these out, I have to be really careful when I pass that bit right up to the edge here, because if it drops down inside, it will cut deeper into here. So because this bearing is riding along this piece of wood right here, that bearing is riding along here, I need to be very careful when I get to this edge that I stop right here and then continue the cut right there, and don't let it drop down into this space. Otherwise you can get some little rounded areas. I've done it, it's happened, but I try to control it. And this one turned out very nice. So we're just going to keep stacking them up. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of point that out. And then the other thing is, when I do actually put the bottoms in here, there is a little space here that is not covered. It's the bottom. Who cares? Right? I mean, yeah, it's just, it makes me sad sometimes to look at that. But now the other thing is, when I'm doing these, I really need to make sure that I'm doing the bottom of the base and not the top. That would be sad and tragic. So I just need to make sure that the handles are down. I mean, it's the little things that get you. But that would be basically a base that gets thrown away if I routed the wrong side. So, all right, moving on. Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's done. That's a big reason why I like to batch out my work. Let me set these over here for a moment. Is that if I had to go through that process, like over and over again, like finish one box and come back and start that process again, to me, it's just much more economical time-wise to, you know what, get them all set up and then just crank them all through that process and get it all done in one step, because just like the amount of dust and everything else. And it's just, once you get it set up, it's just as easy to do 5 as it is 1. And which is typically why I do batches of work, because it's more profitable and it's a much more efficient use of my time. So if you see me making batches of things, that is why. Now let me just make sure we're good here. Sorry, I'm leaning into the frame and doing all these things, and so rude, but I do want to make sure that we are all set. Some of these had some big chip outs, not, you know, it was trying to chip out as I was using that bit, but having that preliminary cut with the marking gauge, I'll tell you, makes all the difference in the world, because it wherever it chipped right up to that gauge, and then it was all behind and under. And so there was nothing that chipped out into the actual body of the base. And that's really what I care about. And I was successful. Let's talk about this base for a minute. This is my stupid, oops, I made a mistake base. And if you've been watching me make these whole things from the beginning, a few days ago, you'd be like, well, what do you mean it's your mistake? It looks like just the others. It just doesn't have the thing. And you're right, it does not have, this was supposed to be a full-size base with no compartment, which if you look at one of these, just for reference, again, I don't know, I probably have the wrong one here, but just for reference, which one is this? This is number 2. We'll grab number 2 here. These bases that I made look larger. They have this board that comes across, and I probably am doing it the wrong side. These are all cut to fit, measure. So anyway, whatever. Anyway, it's wood swells and shrinks, so these are going to have to refit it a little bit. But there's a base, there's a side compartment in these, and then the sewing machine goes in here. These are all cut correctly. All the ones that have the side compartment are cut correctly. I was like, you know, I didn't have as long a piece of wood when I was doing my measurements. I said, you know, let me just make a standard base with no compartment, and it'll be much easier and faster, and this one will get done before those. I was like, that's cool. And then I was looking at it and going, looks really long for a standard size base. So I came down and grabbed my trusty, dusty sewing machine down here that I use for test fitting. This is a standard, I think this is a 15, a Singer 15 sewing machine. It's one of the, what I call the standard size Singer machines. It's the same size as about a half dozen or more of the most popular machines Singer ever made. And so there are more of these out there than anything else. I mean, they made millions every year of this size machine. So I typically sometimes will make just a base that accommodates this single size machine. And if you're kind of looking at it now, you might be seeing that, I might have made just a wee bit of a measuring mistake. I can set it inside here so you can see. That little space right here, let me do it this way. This space right here, it should not be there. This base should be, I have no idea what the hell I did. On the interior of this base, it should be 14 3/4 inches long, because that is the bed length of this machine. I have no idea how I did this. This is 16 7/8 inches long. What in earth was I thinking? When I measured this, I cut this, holy crap, This is cut. Now, this is a little short because I shaved these down, but I'm going to say that I cut these to 18.5 inches. On my wall over there, right, so you can see me, see my face of shame. On my wall over on that side of the shop, I keep 2-dimensional drawings of my 2 different size bases. There's this machine, and then there's bases I make for a 3/4 size machine, which is, it's called a 3/4 machine. It's about 3/4 of the size of this one. It has a smaller base. It's not quite as wide, and they're very popular as well. So I make bases for those, and I make bases for the big boys here. And which, by the way, my wife is going to kill me if she sees how dusty this is. But I make 2 different size bases, and in those 2 different size bases, I'll make one with a storage compartment on the side, and then one where the machine just sets in the base and there's nothing there but just base, right? Well, I didn't do that with this one. So I've done that in the past where I could say, oh, well, let me go in and I'll do some specialty cuts, cut this down, remake the base. I've done that. Problem with this one, I put a logo on here. So the logo on the base is centered. If I cut this down, then the logo would be off center. I have some thoughts. It's not completely trashed. I have some thoughts. And probably what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to have to put a block in down here. I'll put my corners in here to support the machine. And then I will probably put an insert inside here for a top to set inside and make a perfect match on this thing right here. Yeah. I'll figure something out, and then probably what I'll do is I'll keep this and let my wife use it for one of her mini sewing machines that she has. And she gets stuff in and out, and she needs a base to work with. That'll give a little working surface up front. It's not as big as the... Anyway, this is my shame piece right here. Measure twice, cut once. I cut a whole bunch of times and got the size wrong. Anyway, I will salvage this piece and make it usable, and it'll actually look like it was made to be that way. That is one of the things I appreciate about advancing in my woodworking skills, is that I have found new ways to creatively cover my oopses. Whether it's like getting a chip out from a router bit and I make these contoured so that you can't tell that it was actually just a big chip out and I lost a huge piece of wood that I couldn't glue in, or coming up with creative fixes for ways that I've measured wrong. You know, like I said, if I hadn't put this logo in here, I could have easily fixed this by cutting this edge off to make it the appropriate length, cut these sideboards out, make another little cut in here, and then basically just shove the whole thing down. I could have done that, and it would have been a simple fix. I mean, not simple, but it would have been an easier fix. But because I put this logo on here, that logo needs to be, there you go. That logo needs to be in the middle. If I did that, it would be offset, and then it would look weird. And, you know, it's disappointing, but it also provides me with new ways to test my woodworking skills. That's the way I look at it. You know, it's just a skill test. I create these little self-tests for myself just to keep it interesting, because, you know, it's not interesting enough. Anyway, that's the name of that tune. I will put a bottom in this one just like all the others, so I will have to cut and measure a bottom for this, which this piece obviously won't fit. I would not use this piece as a bottom also. You can see the, hopefully you can see the wood grain is running this way, and I like the wood grain to run lengthwise. And if it would just look weird if it was sideways to me. It's just an aesthetic thing. It has no bearing on the performance of the bottom. To me, it's just an aesthetic. but I do like the wood grain to run longitudinally, or whatever that word would be, lengthwise, on my bases. All right. Whoop, let me put this back in so it doesn't get damaged. All right, now that we've got that established, we need to cut some base bottoms. And to do that, I need to get a measurement of how wide that rabbet is that we just cut into these bases. Now, they should all have pretty close to the same width. I know I measured that right. So they should all have pretty close to the same width, minus a millimeter here or there. And if I take a measurement of that, I'm gonna do it close to the edge because you might get some flexing on these, but I'm gonna do it close to the edge here so there's no flexing. And this comes in at just under 7 5/8. I mean, if I went to 9/16, let's check this one. Yeah, 9/16. And like I said, some are going to be closer to 9/16. Some of them may be a little over 9/16. 9/16. So that seems to be the standard width that I'm going to need for all of these bases, is a 9/16 width on my plywood. Man, that thing creates some dust. I'm glad I have my fan running down there to kind of clear the air out and get some of this out of here. If you didn't watch it, please go back. I'm going to put a separate video up just of how I made that fan system. If you can't afford a huge air filtration system, you can afford $40 for better breathing. And so watch that video. I'm going to get that up today, and I'll try to put a link in this video for it as well. Anyway, a lot of dust. But what we need to do is establish, first of all, lengths. The other thing is, how long are these bases on the inside? How long is that rabbet over here? That rabbet is, stop moving around, 20 inches. 20 inches? 20 inches. So to get 2 of these out of one long piece, like I said, I buy 2x4 pieces of plywood, and I usually cut those down strip-wise. So I'll cut a strip off of them, and then I'll cut those down to size that I need, because it's 48 inches. So that'll give me more than enough length to get 2 out of a 7 and a little over a ½ inch wide piece. So what I need to do is move all this stuff down. I am going to actually lower this bit back into the table over here, just so you can see. I mean, I love having the table here, but I do like to, if I'm not going to be using the router table for a while, and let me go ahead and unplug it. If I'm not going to be using the router table for a while, I do like to either take the bits out or put the flat piece back in there, lower the bit down, because you could damage a work surface by hitting the edge of that and scratch a work surface, or damage the bit itself. So I always like to get this out of the way. Just, I don't always do things the way I should, but I try. All right, so lower that down. I don't necessarily have to take it out. I can leave the bit in there, but I am going to replace the plate, maybe. There we go. And put that flat plate back in. So I'll drop this back into the carriage, grab that flat plate back, put it down here, and that sits down in there, lock it back. All right, and now I've got a nice flat work surface. Take my little spinny handle, I just got a little hole I drilled, oops, in the corner of my table, and I just drop it in there, and that way I always know where it is. And then my my wrench, there's a nail on the end of my table, like back over here, or not a nail, but a screw. That's where my wrench stays. So I try to keep things in close proximity to where they need to be. All right, speaking of where things need to be, I need to change some camera angles here. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to take just like a couple of minute break to set things up. If you want to go grab something to drink or eat or whatever you do when you're on a break, come right back and we'll start cutting wood. All right, welcome back. I just had to grab some wood, set up some table saw stuff, and you know, other various things. But we are in shape now. I'm going to go ahead and, while I'm standing right here, put my dust collection in. And there we go. So how's my table saw view right there? I've got two different views. I'm not sure which one to use. I've got that one. I've got that one. Maybe we'll go with that one. This is not normally how I would cut this, but because I've got a lot of technical gear up on, just so you can see, I've got a lot of like technical gear up here that I use for doing the web casting stuff, the streaming. I don't want to have to clear all that out of the way to do the big cuts on the plywood. So I am cutting it a little different than I normally would. So what do I mean by that? Normally, standing here and I'll show you, what I would do is I would use this edge against my fence. I would measure over 7 5, or 9/16 or whatever, and then just cut this right here. I'm just going to move it the whole thing over and cut that chunk out of this side of the board. It's not really a big deal. I mean, it still works. And I'm actually going to cut a little wider than that. I think I'm going to cut an 8-inch section, and then I will fine tune that once we get going. I also have this piece right here that I'm going to use for my mistake box. We'll call it my special box. You can see, hopefully, this has a void in it that was filled, and they come from the store like this. They will put these panels together, and then if there's any voids, knot holes, things like that, they will just slap some wood putty in there and wipe it off so that it's kind of flush. I mean, it has a usable side, but that's just ugly. So I try not to include that. If I get one that has some small voids like that, I try not to include it in my base because it doesn't look great. But this shorty base that I made has a length for an interior of, I think it's 17. Just measure that really quick. 17, and we're going to call it 2, 4, 6, 3/8 maybe, just a hair over 3/8. So 17 3/8 inches long. Now, at 17 3/8 inches, why is this not going? Hello, everybody going here? It says live. There we go. Facebook does weird things sometimes. Anyway, at 17 3/8 inches, I couldn't do one of the longer ones on here because then it would eat into that, but I can get 17 3/8 inches, comes up just shy of that imperfection. So I can use this piece because, like I said, always trying to use as much of the wood as I can. So I can use this piece for that shorty board or base, and then I'll cut the rest of them out of this larger piece. Let me set this aside. This is, unfortunately, like I said, sometimes it's really tough to find good pieces that don't have voids in them. This one has some in there. I'm going to try to minimize that as much as I can and use the wood around the voids as best I can. There are just some, I mean, you're going to get knots and such. And then the other thing is, well, which side do you want to have out? Which side do you want to see when you actually look? This side is super clean, with the exception of the label on there. This side is super clean. It does have one little area down here that was like a little crack in the veneer of the top layer that they put some stuff in, but that's actually not too bad. That'll stain up pretty nicely, so I'm not worried about that. All right, so I'm going to use this side, or probably is the interior of the base. Yeah. Let me set up the depth of cut here. So I'm just going to put this is that test piece that we had over there. I'm going to set this up and just put my depth up enough to just barely clear underneath that top tooth, because that's just how I like to run it. Let me grab my electrical cord and get some juice to the machine here. I already did a measurement on here to see where I wanted to cut, but let me just double check that. Like I said, I'm going to cut these a little wider than it's a little wider than I need, and I'll go back and refine the cut afterwards. So I marked it at 8 inches, and what we're going to do is just carry that mark over to the front here. So I'm going to put this mark on the front just so I can, oh great, you love it when the lead falls out of your pencil. All right, now I can take this and set it up against the fence. Now these lines, this is a factory cut, so it's pretty darn straight against the fence. I don't have to worry about that. I need to come over this way just a hair. There we go. So that will work. I do have my gripper that I will use as I'm running this through. Okay, let me grab some ears, turn on some dust collection, and we will make this first cut. Let's go. One more. All right, I'm going to measure one more here to give me an 8-inch cut on this other board here. Let me get the pencil, and so I need to figure out, okay, 8 inches over here. It's going to be right here. And actually, this is, I mean, it's nice because it does give me 3 lanes. If I cut them at 8 inches, obviously, you know, this is 24 inches wide. So it does give me 3 pieces minus a little bit because of the curve of the blade, but that's okay. I don't need a full 8 inches for the bases, so that works out well. Let me just make sure that I put a line on here so I can see where I'm aligning that cut when I set up the fence here. Bring the fence over. And I always like to set the fence handle down because sometimes it skews this into a correct position, and then recheck my measurement, and then if it's not right, I'll just give it a little tap, get it to the right spot, and then lock it back down again. You want to make sure that handle's tightened down. There's nothing worse than having your fence drift as you're cutting. It just, it'll ruin your day. All right, let's cut one more here. Now to give us enough that we can make all the base bottoms. And just real quickly, if you saw me readjust the handle on the gripper at the very end of the cut, that's because I don't want the gripper just on this piece. I want it pushing both pieces through equally. So I readjust so that it's resting on both pieces. And that way, if this shifts or whatever at the end of the cut, if it's not supported with downward pressure being pushed through equally, it can like knock the edge or ruin that cut. So I just kind of align them up, and that way it pushes them through equally, and there's tension on both, and that way I get a nice straight cut all the way to the end of the board. All right, I have my 1, 2, 3 pieces. Now, if I flip these over, let's look at the bottoms of these real quick. This one is actually super clean. I'm gonna get full use out of this one. So it's super clean on that one. This one does have a void right here that was filled. It's not too bad. It's kind of mild. This one also has a void. It's a knot though. Most of that is knot, so I don't mind the knot so much because that's more natural. This one is pretty heavy with the filler on there. So I definitely would not use this end of the board. But because I need, let's see how many I need. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bases. I've got 1 shorty covered. That's with a different piece. So I'm going to need 4 pieces to come out of here. If I look at this, these pieces need to be, let me grab a base here and just get our measurements down for the length and figure out how long they're going to be, because like I said, I like to get as much use out of my wood as I can. I'm just going to grab this ruler right here. It's going to work? No, it's not long enough. Of course not. There we go. All right, I need, what did I say, 20 inches? Well, not always 20, nope. Just shy of 20 inches of length. And 20 inches on this one puts me, stop grabbing the wrong pencil, puts me right here. All right, so I've got 20 inches here. There's that void. And I'm gonna have to kind of include this void in my next one because this one's bad. I don't want to use this void at all, but this one's not too bad. So yeah, so 20 inches will put me up here in this neighborhood over here. So I guess I will get both ends out of this one unless, well, hang on, wait a second. Let's see here. Yeah, let me look at this one. I think this one's a little better. Like I said, this one does have a void right here, but it's not, it's more of a knot, and I'll take the knot any day over grain, or not grain, but wood putty filler. So let's see here, we're gonna get 20 inches about, so here, and then we'll get another 20 inches, give or take, right here. Oh, okay, well, maybe not. This puts this one right in the corner. I don't like this piece. Sadness. Okay, I'm going back to the other piece. We'll use that. You know, is what it is. We'll use that. All right, now I need to establish my final width on these things. So I'm going to be cutting these and this shorty down to their final width. I might make adjustments on these. So let me move my computer out of the way because I need to measure each box to make sure that I'm getting the exact width that I want, because now I'm coming down to needing more precise measurement on these. So let's start with this one. Okay, I am, let's see, 9/16. I'm going to measure both ends and 9/16. So 7 and 9/16. I'm going to set this just with my measuring tape first on my bar right here, and then we'll go back and we will double check it. And yeah, 9/16. That's pretty spot on. So 9/16. All right. I'm going to run. Now, let me check to make sure I've got 2, because if I cut one, let me make sure 9/16 will run for at least 2 of these, right? 9/16. Okay. So if I cut one of these down to 9/16, I am assured that it will at least be usable in 2 boxes. So right here and here, this one's gonna be 9, these are 9/16. So let me grab one of these and run it through right now at 9/16. And that's an ugly edge right here. So I'm gonna run this nice clean edge through. All right, let me get some ears and turn on the dust, and let's cut this first one. Uh-huh. So when you saw me leave frame there for just a moment, I came super close to pushing my laptop off the workbench with this piece as I was pushing it through. So I kind of had to run over there and make an adjustment, but that's all right. All right, these are 9/16 now, 7 and 9/16, so that's good. The next one is my shorty base. Let's cut that one, see what this needs to be. See if we need to make any adjustments. It's a little under 9/16, just a hair under. Although, well, like I said, it can change just ever so slightly from end to end. Let me check the large ones. Instead of using that one first, let me check these other ones and see if I need to make an adjustment to the cut width. 9/16 works for this one. Let's try this one. All right. And all right. Okay. Let me do another 9/16 on this long board, and then I'm going to make it just a tad smaller for our shorty base. That's what we're calling it now. We're calling it the shorty base. Not the mistake base, the shorty base. All right, let me find a nice clean edge here to run this through. And yeah. All right, there's another 9/16, which is 7 and 9/16. And then we are going to just make this one just a touch smaller. Just a hair smaller than that. We're going to use this nice clean edge right here. Let's see what I got for measurement, just to make sure. Yeah, so this one's just a 30-second under. I lowered it by about a 30-second, and that would give me enough wiggle room. So one more. Alrighty, those are done, at least for width. And what I will generally end up doing is I take these and just test fit the width in the base, make sure that the fit inside the rabbet is correct. So I'll take this and I'll take this piece that we just cut. This is the one that was a little less than that. And there you go. I mean, usually I'll get like a 30-second of free space along the edge. I don't want it to be super tight wedged in there, and that's why I lowered the space on this one, because you just want it to be a nice fit inside with a little bit of space in there just for wood contraction and expansion and stuff like that. So this is a good fit. So now I'll have to cut the length on it, but that's okay. This is a good fit. And then let's just quickly, these were all cut at 7 9/16, so I can check the width on this one as well. And it sits perfectly inside there. Check the other end, just to make sure. So yeah, so these fit in here really well. And there's just enough space that most of it's going to be covered. When I glue these, there'll be a lot of glue surface on the bottom of this, so that works out well. All right. Thank you, Mr. Table Saw. I could use my crosscut saw or my crosscut to do these on the table saw, or I can cut these over on the crosscut sled. I think I'm going to actually cut the width on these on, wow, what am I going to use here? I think I'm going to use the table saw today. I mean, it's a little overkill to use that saw over there, the compound miter saw, just to do a really simple 7-inch wide. It's not even really a crosscut because there's no real grain on plywood. I mean, there is, but it's crisscross. So I'm going to use this, and then we will just cut one end off. We will measure how far over it needs to go. We'll cut the other end off. Once I do that, each piece will be specific to a base. So right now they're just kind of like, well, they're all 7 9/16 wide, but once I cut it to length, it's going to be married to that particular base from that point on. So like I said, this one is the appropriate size. There's a void here, which we want to avoid, so this will be cut off. So this is going to get cut off right here. So we already have one edge established. All I need to do is figure out how long this is, which I said was 17 and something, I think. Yeah, 17 and 5/16. See, now that's closer to 3/8. Don't want to do 3/8 on that. That's a little under 3/8. That's what I said. It's like, it's just a hair under 3/8. Just a hair under, and this is just a hair over 3/8. I mean, you get just a, so let's go a hair under 7 3/8. And what I'll do is I'll mark that on the board. Yeah. 17 and 3, I'm sorry, not 7, 17 and 3/8. So let me mark that on the base here, or on the bottom, and figure out where we need to cut this off. From here, we need to go 17 and 3/8 minus just a hair, 1 2 3/8, and minus, we're just going to go over like, I don't know, 30 seconds or so. We'll call that our cut line. I'm just going to draw that in here. Like so. And I probably have to adjust my fence over a little bit. It's a little wide there. A little wide. Let's move some stuff out of the way. And then we can move the fence over. I've got plenty of room over here. I just need to make room over here. There we go. And need to establish where this cut is going to go. So right there. All right, there's our cut. That's pretty much all we need to do. All right, let me gear up and get moving. Now, because the corners are rounded on these bases, I can't truly fit it in for a perfect fit. I can't establish it will fit perfectly, but what I can do is establish that it rests in this way, and then I can move it over and make sure it rests in this way. And then, like I said, I can measure side to side that I'm getting width this way and this way. So it looks like we're good with this one, and it can be set aside. And then we can go on to the next one. These are going to be a little harder to cut because I'm going to need some more length over here. So let me move some bases out of the way first. And this is where the small shop really starts to get kind of tied up here, because I just don't have places to set stuff. It's not the floor, you know what I mean? So I'm going to move these over to this side over here. And then that gives me room to move this fence way over here. I think I will need about 20 inches of cut clearance on this side. Yep. These are going to be, measure this one. So this is actually shorter than 20 inches by, it's like 19 7/8. And this looks like 19 7/8. I need to measure 19 7/8 on one of these. So let's find out where our cut's going to go without it setting actually on the blade. That's probably a good idea. 19 7/8. Get this as straight as I can. 19 7/8 right there. All right, that is my cutting line. I'm just going to bring that right out to the edge here, just so I can align the saw to that. And I need to make sure that that cut is on this side of the saw blade. So if I put it on this side of the saw blade, it will be short by 1/8 of an inch. So I would have never done that before. Never. That's crazy. I would never do that. Ever. All right, let me establish this. Oh yeah, we just get enough clearance there. So. And like this. I like to use the blade that has the outermost edge for the cut, because remember, these are canted blades. So I use the one that has the tooth that's highest on this side. It's kind of tilted like this way. And I use that as my cut line. All right, that looks good. I'm going to back this up just a little bit. All right, let's make a cut here. All right, just checking width on this one right here. I didn't clean some of the fuzz out, but okay, that's a perfect fit that way and a perfect fit this way. All right, welcome to your new home. And we'll just keep on going here. Grab this one. And from now, it's just basically a matter of measuring each one to get that precise cut. See, this one's a little longer than, I can go a little bit past that 7/8. I can actually make it a 1/16 longer than that. So what is that, 15 16ths? So 19 and 15 16ths. Yep. Now, I'd rather have the longest piece of wood against this support, so I'm going to measure it from down here. Then we will cut on the other side of the blade. This is where you don't want to get confused. 19 and 17, or I'm sorry, 15 16ths right there. Okay. And let's draw a little line on that one. Okay, we're going to line this up. And that looks pretty perfect right there. Okay. Great. Let's measure this one. That is that good? Just a hair? Nope, it's good. That's good. We're good. We're all good. We can go this way. Yep. All right. Oh, get these out of the way here. Let me grab another one. We've got 2 more to go. We're making progress. It's happening. I mean, this is woodworking. Woodworking is a marathon. It is not a sprint, typically. This one is actually less than that last measurement. But it's more over. Okay, hang on. No, that's... All right, I'm going to go a hair under, like a 30-second under that last measurement. So I try to be precise. I try to get them a good fit. Doesn't always work out that way. But let's see what we got here. This one's going to be cut from here. And 19. And so here is 15/16, 7/8. We're going to go right there. Yeah. I mean, I don't have to be, I guess I don't have to be that precise, but to me, it just makes it just a tiny bit better of a fit. And I don't know, it's just the way I like to have it. All right, this one goes on this side of the blade because this is our work piece. So measure this one right there. Perfect. All right, let's see how we did with this one. Yeah. Yeah, it's a little looser than I wanted, but it's not bad. It's not a bad fit. I probably could have taken it a little closer in there, but we're still good. And we've got fit on this side, this side. All right, all of our fits are good for this one. Let's make it a nice stack of boards over there. Last one. Let's measure this thing. All right. That one is 15/16. That one is 15/16. 15/16? Yes, it is. All right, this last one we're going to cut to 19 and 15/16. I'm going to use this edge. Excuse me. So let's drag this out, find our spot, mark it up, and just double check. That's 19 and 15/16. Get Woody the Woodpecker over here to draw my line. And just mark the edge of it a little bit. Okay. Let's line this up on the saw. I think that's pretty good. All right. Last cut. All right, let's check this one out. How we looking? How we doing? Width we already knew. Let's try length. Length is Length is just a hair long. Just, I mean, and I kind of guessed it might be because when I was cutting this, I noticed that I went, flip it and see. No, actually, well, no, I think we're good. We're good. All right. I mean, this one's a lot closer. This is probably the closest one. But that being said, it's not so tight that I won't be able to use it and have to trim more off. So I think we're good in that case. Yeah. All right. Every base now has its little corner or little piece to go on there. The next step for me whew, is to blow off my laptop. Oof, dusty today. Let me see here. Just checking really quickly. Let me get you off of that camera now. And you can see I've got a nice stack of boards over here. And a lot of dust. All right. Now it's time to get out the pencil and the nickel and fit these to the bases. What time is it here? 1 o'clock. Not too bad. We're about 2 hours. I'll tell you what. I'm going to call it there for the day. Let me just grab a seat here. I'm going to call it there for the day because the next step on these is to, like I said, to get Mr. Trusty Nickel and draw my radius on all the corners, which I just kind of align the nickel on there. And let me show you. I get the nickel on here, put it in the corner, and then hopefully I have a pencil handy. And then what I do is I will draw a radius on here. And like I said, this radius, so you can see, hopefully that, this way. You can see that radius I just drew on the corner. That radius should fit the radius that was cut by the rabbeting bit. I'll do that for all 4 corners. I'll draw the radius on there. And then I have one of 2 methods that I use for cutting those radius off. I either cut them off or I grind them off. So if I choose to cut them off, I will take them over to the bandsaw and just nibble away to my line there. And then and it's pretty quick, but it's also, I think it's much more prone to, if you slip and make a cut, you're kind of hosed. The other way I do it is to take it over to my 12-inch grinding sander, or not a grinding sander, my 12-inch circular sander, and it has a flat base, and then the sander actually fits this way. It's kind of 90 degrees to it, and then all I do is I kind of feed this corner in and gently go back and forth, feeding it into the sanding blade, or the sanding disc, until I wear off all of the wood that goes right up to the line that I drew. Is one faster than the other? I don't know. I haven't really timed them. It just kind of depends on what kind of mood I'm in, how much stuff is stacked on top of my sander. Right now I've got several projects setting on top of the sander, so it would mean I have to offload those and find a place for them. So I'll probably end up doing these on the bandsaw. And then typically if I do them on the bandsaw, what I'll do is I'll just get a kind of a coarse grit sandpaper on this little puppy, and once I have that kind of close to the radius, I just finish it off with a little bit of sandpaper, and it gets it pretty darn close. And then I start test fitting it into the base. Once I have them test fitted and everything is hunky-dory, then it's time to glue them in. So I will take them and I will run a bead of glue along the rabbet, along all of them. I will get clamps and clamping cauls, which is just pieces of wood to hold the, instead of clamping all along them, I get one clamp and then put a clamping caul, like a piece of wood, that applies the pressure across the length of the board. So I will do that to all of them and get them glued up. and then it's just a matter of letting them sit for a day with the glue. Because like I said, this is not really a structurally secure base. It is just or a bottom. It's just a pretty bottom for it. So the other thing I have to do is remove these stickers. It's kind of annoying. These are from Home Depot, and this is a 1/4 inch 2x4 birch, 1/4 inch. First of all, not a 1/4 inch. Secondly, they put these stickers on, and these stickers do not like to come off. So typically what I would do is get myself a little chisel, like a flat chisel, kind of a wider chisel, and some mineral spirits. I'll wet this down with mineral spirits really well. That kind of loosens the solvent of the glue that they use on the back of the stickers, and I can scrape them off. The only thing I don't like about these stickers sometimes is that they can have a habit of discoloring the wood where the sticker was. And if they were sitting out, like if this piece was sitting out for a long time under lights or whatever, it could actually bleach the top and leave this underneath. So you'll get a residual spot here, which was the natural color as opposed to the color that got a little bit bleached. Anyway, stickers, I don't like them. I wish there was a different way for them to do this, but they always put stickers. Every sheet has a sticker on it, so it's just something I deal with. So anywho, yeah, I think that's where we are for today. There was one thing, someone asked me a question that I thought I would address right at the end, since this is my little chat time here. Is I have like all these different things in progress. If I look around my shop right now, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hang on, I may not be done. 8. Is that it? It's just 8? That's a low number. 8 things going on right now in my shop. I have, oh no, 9, because I have my drop-down table, so 9. I have 9 different projects going on in my shop right now. And somebody says, well, you know, do you ever finish anything? I do. I finish my projects when I get around to them. But this kind of takes me to a point where I want to talk about a hobby as opposed to a job. I had a job for 34 years. I had a job. And I love my job. I worked for the government. I was a forensic photographer at the FBI laboratory. If you didn't know that, that's what I did. I spent the last 17 years of my career as a supervisor over a fantastic group of people that I love and respect. Some of the greatest craftsmen, tradespeople ever. They're just amazing people. But that was my job. This is not my job. This is a hobby. This is something I do for fun. This whole thing that you're looking at right now with the live streaming, it's also just a hobby. It's not a job. I mean, if I make a couple of bucks off of it, that's awesome. I mean, I make the bases because they kind of help perpetuate the expense of running a shop, of having a hobby. If you can sell some of the stuff you make, that keeps you in sandpaper and drill bits and saw blades and other such things, and buying new wood. I'm not in this to pay the rent or, you know, do anything like that. And I appreciate the fact that there are people who do this for a living, and, you know, this is their craft and their job. For me, it's a hobby. It's something that I want to get better at, but I don't want to look at it like, oh God, I got to get back in the shop today. I got to put 5 or 6 hours in because I've got a whole bunch of orders that I have to get out the door. At one point in time, I was actually taking special orders for my bases, and it adds such a level of pressure when you have somebody who is waiting on their order, that you always feel the need that you have to be out here. So I'm retired. I do this for fun. I do this because I love to do it. And the minute it stops being fun, it's like, what's the point? And that's why I have different projects going on, because I don't want to just do the same thing over and over and over again, because then it's a job. If all I did was make bases every day I'm in the shop, I'm just working on bases. I would get incredibly bored with it and not want to do it anymore. So I try to add some variety to my shop life by doing different projects. Actually, I'm sorry, how many did I say? 9? I've got 10, 11. I've got 3 guitar bodies down there that I'm working on that I still need to do and work on. The guitar stuff was my first love of woodworking. That's kind of what got me into all this, was making the guitars. And, but yeah, the minute that I started taking orders was about the time that it stopped being as much fun as it used to be. I mean, it was still challenging and I was trying to come up with new things, but it became more of a job. And I had a job, not looking for another one. I'm looking to make this profitable when it needs to be, but keep it fun, keep me interested, keep me engaged, and, you know, keep me enjoying the craft of woodworking, because to me it's the craft of woodworking. It's what I really love to do. I could knock out a whole bunch of these and they would be kind of subpar stuff. I like to make things that are, you know, that I would be proud to put my name on. And you know, that takes time and effort, and it's not something that I just want to crank out and ship out the door. If I was looking to crank product out, I would just start building cutting boards and just mass producing cutting boards to say, you know what, it's a business and I'm going to crank this stuff up. And how can I best, you know, no, I mean, yes, I do batch things out because it allows me to get the most product out with the least amount of time. But I've started just stopping for a while and I'll start working on something else. And it's like, that's why that knockdown table that I started working on when I started this stream, that was just a little side project thing that I just like, it caught my interest. I said, you know, that would be really cool. Can I make one of those? Let's see where it goes. And I started doing that. And then I had the cutoffs and I started doing these bases. I don't have anybody who is specifically waiting for these bases. I also know that I can probably sell them really easily just through past experience. So I will keep making the bases, but I will make them in the span of time that best fits my shop time and allows me to just keep expanding and doing other things and different things. I brought a 3D printer this year because I had a friend at work who had a 3D printer and was making really cool stuff. And I was like, that's an area I want to explore. That's something I want to do, is get a 3D printer. And I did. I bought a 3D printer and I made some really cool stuff with it. And I still have it and I still use it and make things with it. But that's the kind of thing, like I'm saying, if I had to be in the shop every day for 6 to 8 hours, I wouldn't have time to do things like that. I wouldn't have time to say, hey, give me one of those big pieces of tree trunk you got from the log there, or from the tree that fell in your yard, and let me see about making a table out of it. Oh, I'm sorry, there's another project in the corner. Speaking of tables, I have a live edge slab of cherry that one day is going to be a table as well. But that's that's just my kind of thing, is I just have all these things sitting around that are projects that have sparked my interest and keep me really engaged in my shop and keep me wanting to come out here instead of going, oh, it's Monday, I got to get back in the shop and make bases. So if you're watching this and you want to, if you're one of those people who's bought one of my bases or that you want to buy a base from me, just understand that I do this because I love doing this, and I want to keep being able to do this. I want to keep being able to make bases for you all that need them, but I'm going to do them at a pace that doesn't drive me crazy and allows me to still enjoy my time in the shop, which is one of the reasons why I started doing this live stream. It wasn't because, you know, oh my God, there's a need for live streaming wood stuff and I'm going to be teaching people these things that they need to know and inspiring. It's like, if that happens, that's cool. But to me, it's just kind of like, well, that'd be fun to do. Let's try that. You know, everybody does, like, you know, video game live streams and stuff. There's not a lot of people that live stream from their shop while they do live streams and they talk about stuff, but they're not really working when they're live streaming. And I wanted to kind of bring that to you all. And it was like, to me, I'm a gadget guy. I was able to, you know, play with like the technology and find out, oh, what can I do to get more cameras in here, cover more angles, and be able to control it all from up here and all that. That's just the kind of thing that gets me excited. So anyway, I'm glad if you were here, able to join me. My buddy Pete did stop in and say hi. So yeah, but that's the story of why I have so much stuff going on. It's not that, you know, I have ADD and can't stay focused. It's that if that's all I focused on, I wouldn't want to do it anymore. So I spread my time out amongst different projects, and I don't have any commitments to making anything. I do have a couple of commitments because like that little sewing machine table, that's for a friend. And so I did commit to making that or to doing repairs to that. And then a couple of other different things that I've committed to doing. But for the most part, when I get my bases done at some point in time, I'll throw them up on the webpage. They'll be available for purchase. That money will go into buying more wood and tools and other such things. But I don't feel obligated. And that's my big thing. If I want to take a week off and not do anything, I'm taking a week off. And nobody's going to be looking at me going, I paid money for my stuff. Where is it? So that's why I have so much stuff going on. That and okay, maybe a little ADD. Just a little. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for today. It's gross. I did get a new, I got a new bicycle yesterday. I'm very excited. Took it for a ride. And now it's raining today. So, which is probably a good thing because I've got sore places on like my body that need to have a day off from riding a bike. But anyway, I did get a bike. I was very excited about that. So that's where I'll be spending my part of my time too, is out on the road. Weather's nicer. Going to try to get outside a little bit more. So you try to get outside a little bit more. Be safe out there. Wear your mask, not in the shop, but everywhere you go where you're going to meet people. Let's keep each other safe. And have a great afternoon. Have a great day. I'll see you in the shop on Friday. Take care.